Hey, how you doing? Justin here. Today we're going to continue our adventure making the blues changes, specifically looking at the 4 chord. We've been based in the key of A for this course, so today we're going to be looking at the D7 arpeggio, where it naturally falls under our fingers if we were playing an A blues around the 5th fret, kind of minor pentatonic-y sort of stuff. We want to look at the arpeggio that fits nicely with that, so then we can learn to move between the A7 and the D7 arpeggio. That's the kind of the rough plan here. So let's start by getting a close-up look at the D7 arpeggio. So we're going to start here with the second finger on the root note, which is the 5th fret of the 5th string, the note D. Then we're going to play the major third with the first finger on the 4th fret of the 4th string, which is the note F sharp. Little finger on the note A, which is the 5th, the 7th fret of the 4th string. First finger will then play the 5th fret of the 3rd string, which is the note C, the flat 7 in relation to D. Then third finger will play the root, 7th fret of the 3rd string. Third finger will then lay over, it'll do a roll. Okay, so just roll onto the slightly flatter part of the finger there to play the 7th fret on the 2nd string. First finger will then play 5th fret thinner string, little finger on the 8th fret of the thinner string, and back down. So 5th fret, 7th fret on the 2nd string, 7th fret on the 3rd string, making sure that we put the 3rd finger a little flatter on the 2nd string so it can roll over onto the tip for the 3rd string. First finger playing the 5th fret again, little finger, 7th fret of the 4th string, first finger on the 4th fret. Then we're back to our root note, which was the 5th fret of the 5th string. If you want, and I think it's worth checking it out definitely when you're practicing the arpeggios, first finger 3rd fret of the 5th string. So it's a bit of a reach back. And then the low 5th, which is the 5th fret of the 6th string with the 2nd finger. First finger back on the 3rd fret of the 5th string, finishing again on the root. Okay, so starting and ending on the lowest root note. The first thing I recommend you do is just literally get comfortable with that, particularly that little roll here. Worth spending a little bit of time on those thinner strings. That is where you spend the majority of your time when you're doing a solo anyway, so it makes sense to spend a bit of extra time there. Once you feel confident playing the arpeggio up and down, you want to start trying to mix the order up a little bit. You don't want to spend too long on this, but you don't want to always think of playing it that way, so you can jump from that note to that note. You don't always have to do this, or okay, so that's an important step. You can do it with a backing track, but there's one other step that I kind of think that you might want to check out before you start going on the backing track, and that's the slide up to the major third. Now, if you remember back to the A chord, we had all of these. The framing of the third, particularly with the D7, sounds great. Sliding from that minor third up to the major third. Okay, a lot of the same sort of framing ideas work as well with the D chord. Now, you'll also notice that the fingering has gone out the window, and that's totally cool as well. You don't want to be stuck using this fingering all the time. You want to be able to use whatever fingers you like. Once you feel like you understand it, you know, in theory, this sliding up to the major third, I recommend sticking it on a backing track and just having a bit of a play around. Don't be too strict on yourself. If you hit some extra notes, don't worry about it unless they sound awful, in which case kind of note not to do that again. But just explore it a little bit and see how you feel about kind of targeting these arpeggio tones. literally just explore it. That's the dots, but you really want to spend a little bit of time now getting that arpeggio under your fingers and making it feel comfortable. I really can't express how important the musicality of this stuff is. Like learning an arpeggio and learning it as a kind of a set thing that you can play up and down isn't really going to help you much in blues. It might help you in some other styles where the technical changes become more important, but in blues it's much more about feel and feeling good and incorporating it into the language. So in order to help this become part of the language, it needs to feel natural under your fingers. And I really think that, you know, using some sort of backing and exploring that arpeggio just over the one chord is the way to do it. I'm hoping that you've already been doing that with the A7 and exploring using a full 12-bar blues backing track on the A7 chords, using the A7 arpeggio and using minor pentatonic for the rest. You might like to start, after you feel confident just playing on the D7 a bit, start exploring moving between the A and the D. But I'm going to give you a few little hints on that in the very next lesson. So you might want to stay tuned on a great exercise on changing between the arpeggios, which is coming up. But before you do that, before you start changing from one arpeggio to another one, you want to make sure that you know them both really well, or you're just asking for trouble. So spend at least a week, if not a couple of weeks, maybe even a month, just exploring the D7. Don't be in a hurry and don't think that you need to rush your way through this, because if you take the time on getting the basic foundation skills solid and working for you and natural under your fingers, you'll find the journey becomes a lot more smooth and more fun and more musical, rather than it just being this thing that you've got to consciously really think about. It doesn't generally work, honestly. Take the time, learn the D7 arpeggio really well, get it under your fingers, practice using it with a little loop of a D7, and if you want to, then maybe have a go at moving from an A7 to a D7 in a blues. But like I said, don't spend yodels on it. Just have, you know, dip your toe in, have a little bit of an explore. In the next lesson, I'm going to give you a really, really intense exercise that'll help you change between your A7 and your D7 arpeggios. It's really powerful, so hopefully you'll join me for that. Please do subscribe to my channel. If you dig what I do, I really appreciate your support. And as usual, there'll be plenty of lesson notes over on the website, so click that link in the description if you're over on YouTube. If you happen to be on the website and you've got any questions, leave it in the comments below. For registered users, I try and check out the comments as best as I can, and hopefully you're enjoying this series. I'll see you for more very soon. Bye-bye.